Hey guys, welcome to another edition of my pull plan video where I look at the upcoming arc and banners and share my thoughts and plans on whether am I pulling or skipping those banners. In this video, I'll be covering the arc where Iroha will be featured as the synergy character. You can also refer to the cropped infographic on the left hand side of the slide, which was derived from thewereotter's global forecast. As always, the link to the full version of the forecast will also be included in the video description, so do check it out. Before we head into Iroha's FRBT arc, just a quick look on how I did on the previous arc, which was Jack Garland's FRBT arc. There were 6 banners during the arc, which is 2 banners per event, and I actually pulled on every single event. The first event featured the release of Jack Garland and I pulled on the main banner there, and I went straight in with gems because I wanted to get all of Jack Garland's full kit. Interestingly enough, when I hit 75k gems, which was 300g tokens, I actually got all his weapons there, including his BT weapons, except for his LD. And I was debating whether or not to just redeem his LD through the G tokens, but I decided to actually just spend and pull a couple more times. Luckily, 2 more multis later I scored his LD, so in total I spent 85,000 gems on that banner. The next event after that was Beatrix's event, and on a free multi-pull I was quite lucky to score her FR. Since I already have all the other weapons on that banner, I decided to just use my high power stones and fully max out her FR that way, so I didn't spend any resource on Beatrix's event. Finally, I went in with tickets on Rydia's event, aiming for her FR. I actually scored 1 copy of her FR within 20 tickets, but due to the fact that I was out of high power stones because I spent them all on Beatrix, and I also had a bunch of tickets that are about to expire, I went in deeper. So in total I actually spent 260 tickets, but the 240 tickets past the initial 20 didn't actually got me anything. I just decided to call it, and I went to redeem my high power stones from my power stone stash and max out her FR that way. All in all, I was pretty happy with the results. I spent 85,000 gems and 260 tickets in total, which was actually below what I expect to spend for, at least for the ticket side. So for this reason, in the upcoming arc, I will probably be spending more tickets rather than gems. Alright, so coming to Iroha's FRBT arc. The first event will feature 2 banners, and there's going to be 2 new weapons here. The first new weapon will be Iroha's BT. Her FR is actually not new, it's a rerun and it has been released before. The secondary banner will focus more on Onion Knight, and Onion Knight will receive a new FR weapon on this event. So first up, regarding Iroha, she does receive a minor rework on this event where her S1 and S2 will have more ability users, and the damage on her S1 and her EX is boosted slightly to be more in line with the current meta. Her new BT is sort of interesting. It does provide some very relevant offensive auras to the party, which is always welcome. And this includes Brave damage and Brave cap up plus 50%, 30% HP damage cap up, and Stolen Brave overflow plus 30%. Her BT aura also has a new stacking mechanics that increases in stacks whenever Iroha gets a turn, and it's sort of similar to the stacks with Machina's BT or Bard's BT effect if you've seen those before. With the stacks, each time a party member does an HP attack, the party member will also get 1 additional HP dump at the end of it, and the value of the HP dump is based on that character's percentage of health bravery, and the percentage depends on the number of stacks Iroha has. It starts at 20% at 0 stacks and increases by another 20% for each stack, where it maxes out at 100% when it hits 4 stacks. Overall, it's more or less another way of how Iroha can further help boost the HP damage output of your entire party. Now, as I mentioned, Iroha's FR isn't a new weapon here, but I included the information about her FR on this slide as well, just for reference. So when you enter Iroha's Force time, Each time you have at least 20% of your max brave at the end of your turn, you get a plus 20% force bonus boost. And when you end your turn with at least 100% of your max HP, you get a further plus 30%. In general, it's extremely easy to meet these conditionals, so most players should be able to get the full plus 50% at the end of your turn. And because her conditionals are only reliant on your stats at the end of your turn, it means that you will also get the full plus 50% if you do a non-attacking ability. On the flip side, there's only 2 force conditionals that she has, and it caps out only at plus 50%. Coming to Onion Knight, he received a massive rework across his kit, because before this event his kit is actually extremely outdated. For those not very familiar with Onion Knight, he's sort of a mixed physical magical ice DPS character with party ice enchant utility, and in addition to that he also has the utility to turn manipulate the party via his LD. His newly released FR when used will provide the same turn manipulation utility as his LD, and is also an instant turn attack. His force conditionals are when a player does any ice elemental attack, you get plus 20%, and since Onion Knight enchants the party with ice, it shouldn't be any issue meeting the first conditional. If it's Onion Knight himself who does the ice elemental attack, he gets an additional 10%, so on his turn he gets 30% instead of 20%. And finally, if your turn passes where you have another player who have acted the turn before, you get a plus 40%. So as long as you're taking consecutive turns and not allowing the enemies to take turn, you should also be getting the plus 40% as well. And in total, as long as it's Onion Knight acting, that means that all 3 conditionals total to plus 70%. My plans here are actually to skip. I already have all of Iroha's weapon, except of course save for her BT, and I could always potentially luck out on her BT when pulling on one of the other banners on this arc anyway. As for Onion Knight, I really don't have any interest in his kit nor his FR. I'm always not really a fan of so-called hybrid characters, and to me Onion Knight sort of fits into sort of like a third character wheelhouse where he doesn't truly specialize in anything in particular, but he's sort of like a jack of all trades, master of none. And to me really, when I build a party of 3, I try to instead pick characters who excel at a certain role. So my thought process is, even if I did pull for Onion Knight FR, it's going to be a struggle finding fights where I really want to use Onion Knight as opposed to one other character. So when all is said and done, I think I just prefer to skip these banners altogether and move on to the next few banners on this arc. The next event coming up after that will be Machina's Intersecting Wheels. If you've been following my videos, you would know that I've always been a fan of Machina. I've actually used him for quite a long time during the Lufenia and the early Shinryu era, and really only stopped using him when I had to disassemble my Sword Ultimate Weapon to make room for the Fist Ultimate Weapon when Tifa FR came about. I did try to search online and I don't see any indication that Machina will get a rework during his Intersecting Wheels. I may be mistaken there, but I think that's really going to be the case. That being said, he will get a new FR weapon on this event, and for a selfish damage dealer, I have to say I really like the potential his FR has. First off, his force attack is an instant turn attack, which means Machina will get to act again, and you can chain this into LD or BT mode. His force conditionals are as follows: whenever you do any melee attack, and this includes often melee attacks, you get plus 5%. If Machina is the one that does the melee attack, he gets a further 20% for a total of 25%. And whenever you do any modified brave or HP attack, you get plus 40%. Lastly, whenever you use any attack which has either a low or high turn rate, you get another plus 15% to the force bonus. The potential for Machina here is extremely high, mainly because Machina also can abuse this by going into BT mode to get consecutive turns. Machina himself would have no problem meeting all 4 conditionals through his HP plus Furious Blades attack, which he gets access to when his BT aura is up. Not forgetting that at the end of every Machina's attacks, he also does his Spiral Linchpin follow-up, which means that on Machina's turn, he will get 25% for his regular attack, 25% for his Spiral Linchpin, 40% assuming you have used his HP plus Furious Burst, and another 15% because that attack is actually a low turn rate attack. This means that if you go into Machina's FR and then you go into BT plus and BT mode, as long as you use his HP plus Furious Blades during his turn, he can potentially get a total of 105% force bonus increase every single turn in his BT mode. There is one other aspect of Machina's kit that I think really should be considered when you are deciding whether or not you want to pull for him, and that is his bonus to melee attacks HP damage. Normally his BT aura already gives a bonus plus 30% to melee attacks HP cap up. When you are in Machina's force time, you get a further plus 50% HP damage cap up as long as you're using melee attacks, and this stacks, which means that when Machina's FR and BT aura is up, you get a plus 80% HP damage cap up for melee attacks. This is an extremely high increase, and you can also further abuse this by using melee often attackers such as Core or Young, which also benefit from the plus 80% HP damage cap up. The one drawback though I guess about Machina is that he doesn't get a damage rework on this event. Overall, he's still one of the highest damage potential units in the game because his HP plus Furious Blades I believe is already another 7 or 8 HP dumps in total, and his Spiral Linchpin follow-up is another 2 HP dumps. So his damage is really nothing to scoff at, of course noting that you do really need to have him fully built, which includes his BT at green, but I guess that's really the same with virtually almost every BT DPS characters nowadays anyway. Overall, what this means though is that he really isn't as dominant in the DPS department as he used to be. Nowadays, there are actually other DPS options who can do at least as much damage as Machina, if not slightly more, and this includes the recently released Jack Garland. You have Sid Reigns, who recently had his FR and BT+, and of course you have the usual favorites of Tifa and Rinoa, who still do pretty much very good DPS even up to till this day. For me though, because I always liked how Machina plays and I really liked his attack animation, I'm quite happy to see him getting his FR, and really nice to see how his FR fits his playstyle. Of course, some might say that other characters will have difficulty meeting his force conditionals, but really if you're bringing Machina in your main party, you'd actually want Machina to be taking most of the turns anyway once you enter force time, so I don't really see that as a disadvantage when it comes to him. I will be going in with tickets, trying to score his FR, and to me it's going to be a bonus here because I've already got him greened anyway, so it doesn't really take much more to max him out and start using him again, at least for a couple of events. Finally, we have FuSoYa event. FuSoYa is a character from Final Fantasy IV, and he makes his debut here. From the way his kit looks, he seems to function more as a support / disabler unit in this game. FuSoYa's S1 is an AoE magical Brave and HP attack, which gives him one of his party auras in the form of an 8-turn buff called Bless. His S2 is a single target Brave and HP attack but with splash damage, and his S2 by itself would inflict 1 turn of paralysis on all enemies and 6 turns of speed down debuff. His EX is a hard hitting attack, and it also has its own signature frame buff tied to it, plus inflicts a 2-turn HP damage up debuff on all enemies. Finally, as with almost all characters, the key weapon passive for him would be his LD passive. Firstly, his LD upon use will grant him 1 free S1, S2 or AA use. It will also extend all debuffs that he has inflicted by additional 2 turns, and this combos very nicely with the 1 turn paralysis that he would already have applied on all enemies. Finally, his LD also grants him another framed buff that provides more party auras as well. As long as he has this LD buff up, all debuffs that FuSoYa inflicts will become enframed by a silver frame, and this also includes the paralysis debuff that he has. FuSoYa also gets an FR weapon on his debut, and his force attack upon use will inflict a 2-turn paralysis on all enemies. His force conditional is as follows. Whenever a player character regens Brave before their turn, they get a plus 30% force bonus percentage. Whenever you attack a debuffed enemy on your turn, you also get a further 30% force bonus. And finally, whenever FuSoYa himself attacks a debuffed enemy, he gets a further plus 10%. So FuSoYa attacking a debuffed enemy in total gets 40% force gauge bonus. During FuSoYa's force time, all player Brave gains is boosted by an additional plus 30%, and all attacks will heal you for 10% of the HP damage that you deal up to 30% of your maximum HP. I'll be honest here, I don't really have a lot of interest in FuSoYa as a character in this game, and I'll cover more on my reasons why on the next slide. I am conscious though that this event will likely also have ticket missions, and if I skip this banner altogether, then it may be quite a challenge bringing just a 15 CP if we even get the 15 CP weapon for free FuSoYa to the ticket mission. So that is one consideration, but the other consideration that I have also is that Cypher is a secondary featured character on the banner, and I don't actually have Cypher's LD, so if I do pull on this banner, being able to get Cypher's LD along the way is an added temptation. I think overall whether or not I will pull on this event, I think largely depends on how I did in Machina's event. If I manage to get lucky and score Machina's FR without spending too many tickets, then I may come in here with some tickets aiming to just go until I get FuSoYa's EX or LD, something like that will allow FuSoYa to not be a complete dead weight in a ticket mission run. But if my luck on Machina's banner is extremely bad and I have to sink in a lot of tickets there, then I may just skip this banner altogether and just try my best to carry a deadweight FuSoYa through the ticket mission instead. One final note, Karen is also one of the secondary featured characters, and the second banner actually features his BT weapon. He does receive a rework on this event where his S1, EX and LD damage is boosted more in line with the current meta, and overall he is an okay support character, so to speak, but he doesn't really stand out versus many other support units that we have access to currently. On this part of the video, I'll be covering my thoughts and opinions on which characters you can potentially aim for if you are kinda low in resources in terms of gems, tickets, or maybe even BT ingots or high armor ingots. Usually what I will do is split the characters across just 2 categories. The first category being good value, which would be characters that I think would give you a lot of value regardless of who you already have built on your roster, which is I guess a testament to how good they are in the current meta. Over in the role fulfillment category, these are characters that may have some value, but I think it largely also depends on who you already have built in your roster, because there may be decent alternatives to these characters, which would mean that there's maybe not a lot of need to pull for them. As you can see in this arc, I don't actually think that there's any character that's really meta defining or anything like that. Now you'll notice that I place Onion Knight and Machina sort of on the left hand side of the role fulfillment category, and FuSoYa, Iroha and Karen on the right hand side. The position here is not related to how close they are to being good value. The groupings here are more intended to actually show that Onion Knight and Machina is really more on the DPS side of things, whereas the other three, which is FuSoYa, Iroha and Karen, are all more as support characters. If I do have to pick one character which I think is closest to the good value category, my pick would obviously be Machina. Machina's FR is really powerful and is very well suited for his role as a selfish damage dealer character. And the fact that if he has both his BT aura and force time up, he gives a whopping plus 80% to melee HP damage cap up is something not to be sneezed at, which sort of translates to, in the right setup, if you play around Machina's strengths, he can actually deal a lot of damage and in some cases, be sort of on par with the highest tier of DPS characters that we currently have. But that's also the reason why I don't put him in the good value category, because my opinion is that even if properly built around, he isn't any stronger than the highest damage dealer characters that we have, and many people would probably have pulled for Jack Garland recently. Of course, if you don't have a good or reliable damage dealer in your roster because maybe you're fairly new, then definitely Machina is someone worth pulling for. Ultimately, I think for Machina really just depends on whether are you interested in adding another damage dealer in your roster or not. Onion Knight, on hindsight, I think I should actually place him a little bit further on the right because his position is a little bit misleading on the picture here. I don't really see a lot of value in Onion Knight. And to be honest here, a lot of this is based on my bias against mixed utility characters. I guess some players would like to have these sort of characters when you put together your party because they can fulfill more than one utility or role in the fight. But as I've mentioned earlier in the video, when I put a party of 3 together, I actually try to pick characters who specialize in certain roles. And if I try to think of situations where I would want to actually main party Onion Knight, I can't really think of any specific situations. Sure, he'd be good in the next event coming up because that's the event where he gets his rework and the boss's mechanics are built around his kit. But beyond that, I can't really imagine that I want to bring him over some of my other characters in my roster. I guess if you've pulled for Onion Knight's BT and LD before, it probably won't take too much to go for his FR as well. So if you like Onion Knight as a character and you've already invested in him before, then maybe he's an okay consideration. But otherwise, I would just recommend to go for one of the other characters. Now, coming to the support character group, FuSoYa, despite being a new character, I also place him in the role fulfillment category for actually many of the same reasons why Onion Knight is here. When I look at FuSoYa's kit, yes, he can potentially be a capable support character with added utility of being able to paralyze enemies. But I'd rather have a more dedicated support character if I want to bring one, and I currently have quite a lot of support characters built in my roster already anyway. The one big drawback about FuSoYa's kit is he doesn't have a force gauge charging skill. Both his S1 and S2 deals damage and so cannot hypercharge the force gauge. And in this era, in Shinryu at least, the entire fight is sort of predicated around you being able to reach 100% force time and enter into a strong force mode in order to deal significant amounts of damage so that the fight wouldn't last half an hour. Which means that if you main party FuSoYa, you'd still likely have to bring another character that is capable enough to charge the force gauge. Yes, I know it is possible to build a party of 3 with no one being able to charge the force gauge and just let the force gauge charge up to 100% on its own. But I don't like the kind of playstyle. It feels kind of slow, and I always ask myself, why do I want to do that when I can just put in a strong support character who can very quickly allow me to hit 100% force gauge. And yes, FuSoYa may be able to inflict 3 turns of paralysis on the enemies, which on paper sounds good. But the reality is that even in Shinryu stages, as long as you build your party properly around the stage, in most stages you can actually just blow up the fight before the enemies even get a turn. And if you can win without the enemies get a turn, then what's the real value of having the paralysis debuff in the first place? I have to say this is really more towards my playstyle preferences, and there's really nothing wrong with allowing the enemies to get turns. And if it's more your cup of tea, where you prefer a more stable run and not trying to blitz the enemies, then FuSoYa probably may be a better option then. Iroha, I don't think still adds a lot of value, even though she gets a minor rework and she gets a new BT weapon here. As always, her support auras are kinda average-ish at best, and she's more suited as the sort of third character where she supplements maybe another support character with auras already in your party. Her BT aura is nice and all, but the only unique thing about her BT aura is the stacking mechanic, and she needs to get 4 turns in order to hit 4 stacks of her BT aura, and to me that's just too slow of a ramp up, even if I could ramp up using her additional ability and such. In addition to that, her FR at this point of the game is a little bit outdated. It can still work, in her first time the conditionals are very easy to fulfill and you still put a large dent in the enemy. But really at this stage in Shinryu era, plus 50% a turn isn't exactly top tier in terms of FR conditionals. Finally, we have Karen. Karen I actually debated even including on this side at all. But I guess if for some reason you want a support character that's more focused on party auras than anything else, then Karen may be a worthy consideration. But otherwise, I really don't see him bringing anything new to the table versus other support characters that you probably have built at this stage. That brings us to the end of this video. In summary, I will be skipping the first 2 banners on this arc on Iroha's event, or Iroha/Onion Knight event. I will very likely be spending tickets to score Machina's FR because I really like Machina's playstyle. And when it comes to FuSoYa, I'll likely be skipping, but I think my decision there depends on how lucky I am in Machina's event. If I do have tickets to spare, I wouldn't mind throwing some on FuSoYa's way, but I don't plan on pulling until I get all his weapons. I'll probably just build him halfway just to the point where I can do ticket missions, and that's also mainly because I'm hoping to score Cypher's LD along the way. If you enjoyed this video, do leave a like, comment and subscribe because it really helps a lot. Till then, I'll see you guys in the next pool plan video. Bye!